Hey everybody, welcome back. After the successful 15-minute run here of a few days ago, I want to do it again. I want to see if I can get that lifter tick cleared up. So in order to try and clear the lifter tick up before I start taking stuff apart, because I could easily have a stuck valve, I could have a bent push rod, but before I try anything, I want to run it at least another 30 minutes. And I'm going to add this in. I think there's already one bottle of this in there already, and I have some sea foam as well. So let's see if adding some more stuff in won't clear this up. About 1200 RPM, no lights on. The oil light and the alternator light work on this, so there are no lights on. And my temperature, let me see if I can turn these lights. Oh, look, the instrument lights still work. I'm barely coming up off of cold. Gas gauge is on empty. We are sitting at about 1250 RPM. We have been running for about 20 minutes, and my temperature at the lower radiator hose is, can I see the lower hose down there? Oh, there it is. Temperature at the lower hose is 123. Radiator is running 133. Over here where it's coming in from the engine, it's running 155. Yeah, it's getting lower and lower and lower in there, so I'm out of fuel. So that was 28 minutes of running, mostly at a high idle. What did I learn? Well, 30 minutes of running with sea foam and Rizlone in it is not going to clear the lifter tick up, so I've got something else going on in there. I may have a bent push rod, I might have something else going on, some other mechanical issue. I'm hoping it's not a bent valve or anything that's going to require me to pull the heads off, because pulling the heads off of this car sucks. I mean, there's lots of cars that are worse, but this one, it sucks. And I tell you what, if I pull the heads off of this car, that smog pump and all the lines for it are not going back on. I'll put them in the trunk if anybody wants them, but it makes it so hard to work on. And of course, the intake manifold weighs about 70 pounds. I think it's time that I'm probably going to have to pull the valve covers off and have a look. Bolted down. Nothing seems amiss over on this side. There's nothing obviously loose or broken. Obviously, I'm going to have to rotate the motor around so there's no weight on any of the valves, so I can spin the push rods and make sure nothing looks bent or acts bent. Well, let's get the other one off and see what we see, because this side is where I think the noise is coming from. So let's see if we can get this one out of here. This one's a little bit more complex, just because there's so much more crap on this side. And honestly, I'm sorely tempted not to put most of these hoses back on. These emissions hoses, really. All right, see what we see back here. There's my problem right there. There's my lifter tick. Alrighty then, right here I have a lifter with let me see if I can get the camera in there. I have a lifter with a buttload of slap in it, a rocker, and I have a push rod that I don't even need to get in there to feel it. I can see it's bent to hell. Others of these seem okay. I can spin the the lifter. Here's, I got another one here that's got a lot of slop. Yeah, and I can feel that push rod's bent too. So I'm guessing I had some stuck valves, and before they would unstick, the lifter's bent, or the push rod's bent. So let me pop that rail off of there and we will see what we can see. So this here is kind of a problem. Unfortunately, the engine's never going to run good with push rods that look like that. Now, those are the only two bent ones on the passenger side, but interestingly enough, and I was trying to keep them in this, I looked at all of them, and I was trying to keep them in the same space they came out of. Not that with this many miles on the engine, I really think it makes that much difference. I also checked out the rocker arms on the rail. They all look fine. Nothing's going on with the rail. And a way to tell which valves are stuck, and this is kind of why I'm thrown. Take a hammer. I like a brass one. And when you tap the top of the valve, I like a fairly heavy hammer. You can use steel if you're careful, but I like a brass one. But listen to this. That valve's not stuck, and as you can see, it bounces the hammer back. This valve, see the difference? That valve's stuck. That valve does not bounce the hammer back. So that's no bueno. This one's okay. That one's okay. That one's okay. That one's okay. That one's okay. And that one's okay. So somewhere along the line, I had a stuck one that came unstuck. Let's go look at the other side. Are there any stuck valves? Nope. One. No. No. You know, sometimes they feel stuck when you first tap them, and then they're free. So I'm not really feeling like I want to call that a stuck valve or not. But I'm running out of room to swing the hammer now. No. 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 Some of them kind of feel stuck when you first tap them, but then they don't. And if they were really stuck, I'd have a bent push rod, and I don't. So they're not stuck. While I have this much clearance over here, I am sorely tempted to get rid of these emissions pipes, because they make this car so hard to work on. I really wanted to leave it stock, but man, those things make it hard to work on. I always put them in the trunk and give them to somebody who wants them, but I mean, I could actually get those out of there now. I'd have to get plugs for the holes, but I did that for the Jeep. Very tempted. I got to think about that one, but that is very, very tempting. Next day, still beautiful out, and I hold in my hand the two formerly bent push rods. What I am going to do today, well, you know what? First thing I'm going to do, oh, you know what? Let me tell you what I did the other day after I was done. I watched my own video clips because my head started getting out of whack because I could not remember which cylinders the bent valves were on. So I went back and I watched my video and which ones were the bent push rods in. It was second from the front and it was fourth from the back. Those are the ones that had the bent push rods, not that one. So that's why I straightened the push rods. I'm going to put the push rods I straightened back in the holes they came out of. I'm going to put the rocker rail back in, and I'm going to turn the engine over with the starter, and I'm just going to kind of watch and see what happens. Also, I think before I do anything else, I'm going to see if I can crack the fittings on this tube loose. I came out a couple times last night and I sprayed them with WD-40. If I can crack those loose, I may take those tubes off. And even if I can get it off or not, and I'm not sure I can, I'm not sure I am even if they'll crack loose. But I think I'm going to put the bore scope in there and see if I can see those valves and see if I can see if any of them look like they're bent or damaged. Anyway, let me try cracking those loose first. They came loose without too big of a fight. Look at the difference in there, in between the head and the shock tower, of the space you have to work. Think about getting those plugs and plug wires in and out of there. Now look at it without that in there. Yeah, that is not a lot of space in there to begin with. And you put a solid steel pipe right down the middle of it, and you've made your job impossible, or very, very, very difficult. So these actually cracked loose and threaded out really easily. So honestly, at this point in time, I think I'm just going to put all this emission stuff in a box. And if somebody wants to restore the car to its original California glory, they'll have the pieces to do it. But I'm going to leave them out, I think. So I now have both of the steel tubes and that hose out. That's not the end of it. I've got this steel pipe, this hose here. That just is going to come right out. That goes to it. This steel pipe here that this is connected to, it goes, threads in there. In fact, that entire block in there, I think, is nothing but the vacuum fittings for that. So that can come out and be completely blocked off. And then that unit can come out and the pump can come out. And I say I'll put it all in a box. If somebody wants to put it back to restore it to its California glory, they can. I think it's also worthy to note here that this was the very beginning of California's stranglehold on the U.S. automakers. Now, this car was made in the California factory to California emission standards, and Ford made them without this stuff for every other state. But the problem is, auto manufacturers quickly figured out that they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to make one car for California and another car for everybody else. So they just started making every car a California car. And that has continued through to this day. And it looks like it's coming to an end. It looks like the new head of the EPA, Lee Zeldin, has said that the Clean Air Act is unenforceable. The Trump administration wants to break the California Air Resource Board's hold on the automakers. And Congress wants to say, you're never going to be able to do that again. So thank God. And to those of you who are worried about the environment, modern cars are so clean, they don't need this shit on them, really. They don't. It's become completely unnecessary. It's become a way to do nothing other than try and make cars so expensive the average person cannot buy them. So good riddance to all this crap. And old cars like this, there aren't enough of them on the road, and they don't get driven often enough to make a difference. So I'm going to get the rest of this crap out of here and stop ranting. So I originally had not intended to do this, and honestly, I mean, I'm happy it's done, but everything you see on this table is part of that smog system that was on this car since it was made in California in 1967. None of it is required for the engine to run. And I gotta tell you, without that being in there, this engine bay just damn near looks empty to me. I know the valve covers are off, but still, all that up here, and of course the alternator is still way down there, and I still have a bracket left over here for the pump because it's part of the alternator bracket, but everything else is out. I have the manifold plugged. I know what size the plugs are for the heads. I just need to get down to the store and get those. All that crap from back there and all these extra hoses and pipes are gone. Steel pipes are all gone off it, so I can't imagine how I would have felt about this car had I have done that, 50 years ago when I wanted to. 50? God, yes, 50 years ago. Jesus, it's been a long time. I might have actually not hated working on this car. Anyway, I think what I'm going to do now, it's lunchtime, so I'm going to break for lunch, but I think I'm going to pop the plugs out now that they're not too horribly difficult to get to. I got the push rods, everything back in, get the plugs out, get the rocker rails back on, and then I'm going to watch the valves as I spin the engine over, and we'll see what we can see. And I might poke the if I have the plugs out, I'm gonna poke the borescope in there and see if I can, it's one of those ones that you can reverse the direction of it, see if I can take a look at the valves. So I now have the rockers on this back together, and I'm really not seeing anything wrong. The valves that are up, I have no play, and I can spin the push rod easily. Now, of course, these are hydraulic lifters. No push rod's bent when I tighten them down, and yeah, I mean, everything seems okay. So I haven't pulled the plugs yet. I think I'm gonna crank the engine slowly and just watch it. I can't think of any reason why not. What's the worst that can happen? I mean, I can bend more push rods. They're $2 a piece. I'm not that concerned about it. Yeah, let's crank it and see what happens. That should give you a good view. I'm mainly concerned about this one. That's the one that seemed like it wasn't going to work. Look at that one. Look how slow. Watch this one here. One I'm pointing my finger at, trying not to get my fingers or anything stuck in there when I turn it. Watch how slow it is to rise back up. I mean, it is coming back up, but it's not coming back up fast. I want to be able to come back with the camera and look at all of these. And other than how slow that one is to come back up, I'm not really seeing it. And that is a problem, by the way. It's not going to run good like that. Let's look at this side. And I'm not seeing any problems on that side at all. So right now, my only real problem seems to be in the fact that I have two push rods that got bent and re-straightened that I'm going to want to change. And I still don't know what caused those. That's really interesting, isn't it? I'm having to think the valves must have stuck and the push rod fell out or came off of the lifter. And then when it turned around again, the lifter came down and hit the stuck push rod that was, braced to get these center ones, the ones that go down the hole. It's very difficult for the push rod to come out of the lifter cup. But these that have this great big opening, where'd my flashlight go? These ones that are in this great big opening, the push rod can pretty easily slip off of the lifter. And so that might be what happened, because both of the ones that were bent are in big open areas like that. So that could very well be it. I may pop that plug out of there and see if I can see in that cylinder with the inspection camera. I guess it shouldn't come as any surprise. I'm not building any compression in that cylinder at all. So I've got my inspection camera in there and spun around, and you can see there is so I'm having a lot of problems holding both cameras at once. But there are the valves. You can see there's the spark plug hole I'm coming down through. And one of the valves is open right now. There's the exhaust valve on the right. I don't know how well you can see that. I've got some kind of god-awful reflection in this camera. So I've had a night to ponder on the situation. And before I get too gung-ho about ripping and tearing, I think the wise thing to do is to pause and first attempt to determine the extent of the damage. Is it just that one cylinder? If it's just that one cylinder in that one head, just that one valve in that one cylinder, then my goals are going to be very limited. Get that head off, get a valve, hand lap it, get it in, get everything back together. If it's multiple valves and multiple cylinders on both heads, then things are going to change a bit. But to determine that, I have a compression tester. So let's get the rest of the plugs out. It'll be easy to do now with those emissions pipes gone, and let's run that test. So the results of the compression test are in. Easy to do with that emissions pipe out and with the valve cover off, so there is a maximum amount of clearance. Before I show you the results, I want to remind you, or tell you if you haven't seen the earlier videos on this car, that my goal with this car is not to turn it back into a 330 horsepower hot rod, or 340, however much Ford claimed it had when it was new. And I drove this car when it had that amount of horsepower. It was a quick car. I don't intend to do that. My only goal is to get it running halfway decently. If it has enough horsepower to drive around the block and run smooth, I'm happy with that. And then after I enjoy it for a week or two or three, I'm going to sell it. So I'm not going to be putting, if I can help it, thousands of dollars worth of engine work in this car. In fact, I'm not going to do it even if I can't help it, although I better not say that because God knows what's going to happen. Anyway, here's the results. The driver's bank, 100, 115, 120, and 120. Perfectly acceptable for the amount of miles this engine has and how long it sat without running. The passenger side, 10 in the back, 110, 110, and 50 in the front. And considering the shape of the push rods, I'm going with the fact that there are some bent valves. Now, where am I going to go from here? If I can pop that head out of there, which of course means pulling the intake manifold and really the water pump on this as well, since this up here makes it almost impossible to get the thing back together without pulling the water pump or sliding the intake manifold forward from the back, which equally sucks. If I can get this head out of here and I can put in 2 new valves and hand lap them and get 110 out of them or 100 and better out of them, that's what I'm going to do. I'll be happy. Am I going to pull this one apart? Honestly, I hope not. But until I see what this one is, I'm going to leave that open to speculation. So, on that bombshell, I'm going to end this video. Thanks for watching.